I just want to welcome everybody. It is the last Monday of February. I can't believe it. Where did the month go? This mentor circle was supposed to happen in December, but as you know, things happen in life. So I'm really excited about our topic today. It's all about corporate social responsibility, volunteerism, giving back, what individuals can do, but mainly what can we do to help organizations offer this. I'm just going to go through the agenda. Today, we're going to talk about how it's changed over the years, CSR. Things have evolved a lot. Now we have, the UN Sustainable Development Goals that people strive towards. We also look at how the environment's now part of goals as well. We're going to talk a little bit about what conscious capitalism is, if you've heard that term, and then how purpose-driven organizations can provide options to employees and really make a difference. I think that it's an interesting topic we can kind of get into later when we have a Q&A as to whether or not corporations should have this responsibility and obligation to provide time to their employees. What is their responsibility to also give to their community? So there's a lot of great stuff that we're going to chat about today. So I'm really excited, and we'll have a Q&A with our guest, Jill, and I'll introduce Jill Valentine a little bit later. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Helen Patterson. If you're watching this later, I am the founder of Life Works Well, a consultancy that does everything with heart. And really, we have focused on providing human resources support with heart, really looking at human relations more than human resources and how it's evolved. And we also are a huge part of our goal and mission is also to give back through mentorship and other ways that we contribute to our community as well. And we can talk about that. So I'll start with a brief welcome. I'm here in Toronto and I wanted to acknowledge the lands that I'm here on, which include Indigenous peoples from the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples. And I love that it is all about the dish with one spoon, and these mentor circles represent a circle and including everybody and sharing our knowledge and wisdom with each other. So we continue our work in that area as well. If you want to drop a note as to where you are, so Jill can also check that out, where you're located, that would be great. And I just want to, for us here, giving is a really huge part of what we do, not only as an organization, but as individuals and with our community giving as well. We often do support many volunteer organizations. We also support companies that we align with, like Black Mentorship Inc. and some others that we'll talk about. And I met Jill through a giving trip. Many of you know I went to Africa back in the fall, and that's why we're going to have this, and we're going to chat a little bit about that. But Jill and I met years ago through Lee Mitchell, who runs Women in Business Network, and that's how we sort of started to get to know each other, and I found out about Yugo Impact. So really this topic is how we link all of this together. So really quickly, I just like to start with a reflection, and if you could put in the comment, how you've been involved in volunteerism, giving back, whether it's in your corporation or individually. So, and also anything that you'd like us to reflect on or cover, as I do have a few questions for Jill, but later on we'll have a Q&A. But if there's anything in particular that brought you here today that you'd like us to look at, I see a couple things in the chat now. Burlington, Mississauga, and Toronto for now. So let me just do a quick scan. There are like 24 million Canadians. This was pre-COVID. And I looked at this and I thought 24 million Canadians volunteers, that's wonderful, 2.5 million hours. But then I did the math and I'm like, well, that's only like about an hour and a bit per person if you averaged it. So I thought, maybe we need to do a bit more in this world and in Canada. But there are 3 in 4 people Canadians, and this is again an individual, some information from Stats Canada. Interesting enough, the new Gen Z, are the most likely to volunteer. Some of them who are coming up through high school actually have to do it as part of their curriculum and graduating. So I love that. And then obviously the eldest generation, often that's what happens as you wind down your paid career, you tend to volunteer. But I'm thinking we can all do this throughout our lives and how to mix it up. So let me introduce Jill, who has I just admired for so many years now. She is going to chat a little bit about herself, and she's a certified life and leadership coach. And really, I love what she has done with her company, Yugo Impact, because she has really looked at, well, how can I not only impact communities and the world, but also help individuals transform their lives? And I experienced this firsthand in Africa and Tanzania, where we helped to build the shelter in Tanzania, and really we had some life coaching throughout it as well. And I thought, oh, I've done enough of that, but you know what? We can always learn and grow, and that's also something we do here. And so the impact of giving in that way it really was transformational. Everybody that we were with had changed and came out with something wonderful. And so I love that she's done this in all kinds of communities, and I have her information later. But the triple change effect model, and she's also written a story called Dare to be a Dandelion, and she's just a wonderful role model for her daughter as well. I'm just going to stop the share and for a second, because I wanted Jill to come out. And just if you wouldn't mind, if you want to add anything else, I'd love to talk a little bit about, how your career changed and how it evolved to get to where you are today, if you wouldn't mind, just so people have a little bit of more background.
Sure. So before I became a transformative travel and life purpose coach, I'd actually worked in the nonprofit world. I did a very brief 1-year stint on Bay Street. That was not my jam. And then I moved into the nonprofit world, and I worked for a number of large organizations, including the Heart and Stroke Foundation, Canadian Breast Cancer Foundation, smaller organizations like the Mookie Bomb Association. And I, was involved in all sorts of things, from fundraising, events, that kind of stuff. Still wasn't feeling like I was, one, using my potential, and two, making the impact that I really wanted to. And so I kept searching for both the organization and also what am I actually doing that would meet more of those goals. And I actually ended up becoming a certified recreation therapist through some volunteer experience I had at Casey House, which is an AIDS hospice. And then through that, I got into disability sport. So I was doing some disability sport work in Ontario for about 3 years, loving that. I was really engaged in the community, felt I was making a difference, just a lot more to the job, which was lovely. And from there, I actually then went and spent a year living in Uganda, volunteering in a disability sport capacity. And home from that is when I decided to get into coaching. I felt I couldn't go back to the 9-to-5 after having experienced the freedom that I did, and the using of all of my skills and everything. And I realized that I could probably create for myself the lifestyle that I was looking for. And so, became a coach, went back, did another month of volunteering in the Philippines after Typhoon Haiyan, connected with volunteers there, and recognized that volunteering abroad was crazy transformative. And so was life coaching, and putting them together was just like epic transformation and creating impact for the local communities. So I'm a big believer in both, supporting and doing work locally as well as internationally. And I'm very up to you do what makes sense for you. If it resonates to do local, whatever that cause is, or if it resonates to do something abroad, by all means, there's lots of opportunities there too. My biggest thing is just figure out something and go and do it, and, be a force for good in this world, use your privilege to make a difference. So that was my background and how I've come to now run Yugo Impact and programs like Courage Community Kilimanjaro that Helen participated in. So that's
Yeah,
me.
it's so amazing because I think that so many of us, we think about our local, or it's easy to donate and things like that. We don't always have the time depending on where we are in our life. But, and that's why I've been also on this thing is like, well, how can because organizations, we have all the nonprofits, which I think I looked and it was over 130,000, maybe more. I have to look at that stat. I did write about it, and I'll share some resources with everyone after. We usually put some on our website as well. And so it's just amazing that there's so many nonprofits and there's so many organizations looking for support and volunteers. There's just never enough. One of the things we love to do is mentor, and Mentor Canada is a company that I've been looking to partner with and support because they're a newer company in Canada. They were affiliated with Brothers and Sisters, Big Brothers and Big Sisters. But they have like 15,000 kids in high school waiting for mentors. It's like, why can't people find the time? Well, maybe if organizations offered if they offered a program like volunteer days or a longer term thing, and we'll get to that later. I see that Juanita said she currently volunteers for Parkinson's Foundation, and oh yeah, she's a member for the Emancipation Festival. She's a board member in Owen Sound, and it's an amazing event that looks at some Black history, and it's just phenomenal what they've done up there. And Joanne and I have both volunteered for the HR Professional Association. Oh yeah, the United Way ambassador. We've all done that in our corporation. So it's great to see that people are getting involved. And I thought for me, what was missing was that global aspect of it too. That's why that trip had always been something I wanted to do. There's a lot of organizations that could really use help. And again, coming from a country, an opportunity with privilege, that is just a wonderful way to see if you can connect dots. What are you passionate about? So the next question I had, and feel free to pop questions in. It's just a very small group today, so it can be very interactive. But I'm wondering about how you've seen corporates, I'm calling it CSR, corporate social responsibility. But I'm wondering how you've seen it evolve, because you've been always involved, and then you now have your own business and are running that, and you have a lot of connections with these foundations and other organizations. So how have you seen it evolve in the last decade or so?
Oh, I mean, to be honest, it's been a really interesting evolution. I mean, if you think way back, I mean, not even that long ago, but it really was this sort of like nice little corporate philanthropic thing. Just being very honest, it was something that wives would tend to do, of like the people that worked there. It was, little bake sales, and they would go off and run little charity things. It was very, very removed from the actual running of the business. And then slowly over time, it has integrated to be more and more involved in the business. And so then there was, the United Way and things like that, where it was now part of your paycheck, could just go straight to it. So they started kind of embedding more practices, and exactly like volunteer days would come in. And again, they'd be one-offs, and checks would be cut, and sponsorships through events like golf tournaments and things. Very sort of like ad hoc little things here and there, doing good. It was not necessarily being promoted to people that they were doing it. They were just doing it because that's kind of what you do as an organization, but sort of quietly. And, you might hang plaques up and things about, the team you sponsor and the community and stuff. And then more and more, and I think there was a bit of a few different reasons that this has happened, but more and more organizations came to realize how important it was. There were two reasons. One, staffing and everybody, they really enjoy it. They enjoy giving back. People intrinsically like it. And then two, on the branding side, on the business reputation, people started seeing more, wow, people like that we're doing the giving back. And then it became more of this like you kind of need to be doing good. And of course, with the advent of social media and brands, and everybody's brand is so important now, and all of that, it has become sort of like, how are you not doing it? Because it is such you just like need to be as a brand. I think something like 66% of consumers will purchase from companies that are doing good. So you're literally missing out now as a business if there isn't a give back piece, if your company isn't somehow seen as doing good or giving back. But that still meant that it was a department. There was like an arm, a CSR, corporate social responsibility was kind of over here, and maybe some people worked there. But it wasn't necessarily fully embedded. It was like this sort of, we do it over here. It might have nothing to do with what we actually do as a business. It might be a pet cause of somebody. It might be that the staff made a vote on something. So it was still seen as kind of this thing you do, and there's some branding around it and sponsorship. Nowadays, a lot of companies, not all, but many are literally starting to embed it right within their business model. And this is when we talk about conscious capitalism. And so conscious capitalism is this sort of spectrum where the ultimate sort of conscious business is one where it's now like part of their business model. We make profit and we do good. So something like a B Corp, that it is like literally, as they sit around with the board members, that actually has to be considered when making business decisions. It's not just sort of a department that sits over there and does things to kind of make people happy and to do good. It's now like literally a part of a business's business model. So companies like Patagonia that are selling, things that are ethically and sustainably made, and they're donating 1% of their profits. So just by naturally doing their business, they're doing good. So that's been the shift to more of a holistic, way more branding and awareness around it because of, everything from employees now. I think 57% of employees, there's 50% higher retention in businesses that actually do good, because people want to work for companies that are doing good. They want there to be purpose. They want there to be meaning. They want to feel like they work for a company that gives a damn, to be honest. Like they just don't want to be working for the big corporation that only cares about money anymore. We're becoming sort of a much more conscious society in terms of making a difference in the world. And when people are now going to work, like I say 8 hours, but hey, let's be honest, up to 12 hours a day, you want to feel like you're contributing to the greater good of the world. And maybe that's not exactly what you're doing, but to know that your company actually cares goes a really long way. And employees feeling good about showing up to their work, putting in a lot, and then having opportunities to do good through their work. So that's kind of been the evolution, companies adopted more and more. And now the ones that are doing it really good, it is really holistic. They're looking at it from all angles. And it's not just sort of charity, this idea of ESG, so environmental, social, and governance. It's now a bigger thing. They're looking at their environmental impact, their social impact. It's getting embedded not just in sort of a CSR report, it's now within their annual reports. So there's just a much more larger embracing by the whole corporation about all of their practices, and not just this kind of little arm's length department anymore. People are looking and being like, what are, one of the things you can do on this, I'm jumping all over the place. One of the things you can do is you sort of do a CSR audit. You look at all your business practices to say, where are we doing good? Where are we doing harm, and what changes can we make? What vendors are we using? Can we go from a big vendor that doesn't care about the environment and maybe doing some unethical practices to using ones that have more ethical practices, or more local, or run by, and this is where the social piece, maybe they're run by, people that are new immigrants. Maybe they're run by women. Like, let's choose to actually partner with people that are making the world a better place and give more opportunities to different, organizations or marginalized communities. So it's this way to just look at your whole business as a vehicle for being able to be a force for good and do better. And how can we reduce our carbon footprint? It's really become very holistic, and it's really exciting, to be honest. And the companies that aren't doing it, I'm like, how are you not nowadays?
I know.
Still in the olden days and not here yet. So there's been a big shift, and I'm loving it, and I'm loving those that are role modeling it really well and sharing their best practices. Sorry, Helen, did you want to say something? Or, Helen, did you?
She's stuck, I think.
Because I think this is the thing that, sorry.
That's okay. You froze, but now you're good.
Oh, I'm good now? Okay, that's weird because I was moving in my own screen. I look pretty good. So sorry, hopefully it's okay, but it's been the internet here has been off and on lately, so fingers crossed. Joanne can just jump in and take over.
True, I was just about to. Actually, I wondered, who did you think, I don't know, what organizations do you admire right now that are doing this stuff? Other than Patagonia.
Well, Patagonia is kind of a leader, right? I'd say, because they went
Anybody
beyond
local?
just performative, right?
Did you say, sorry, anybody local?
Yeah, that you admire, that just out of curiosity.
I mean, it's so hard to say because I mean, some of the, when you look at, like, I don't go and do all of the, I don't know all the things they're doing. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I don't know. But some might just stand out. I don't know.
Well, absolutely. And I've loved seeing kind of like even just seeing the big banks stepping up. So when you saw sort of I want to say it could have been TD and I could be wrong, stepping up in terms of, pride and just really owning it from the get-go. And so there's been different organizations who have taken a lead on certain things that I've always admired.
Oh, good.
There's other ones that, like I said, they've just embedded, like there's an amazing, we use it. It's a small local print shop, and they train youth at risk and homeless youth to actually run printing, like to learn how to do the printing. And so slightly higher price point, but versus, and again, no problem with Staples or anything, but versus just me going and giving my money to Staples, I give my money there. And so, so it's a smaller organization doing good. And there's so many, like there's the huge big ones that are stepping up. And, I don't know that some of the huge brands are ever going to be able to change entirely and become completely, like you make running shoes, that's what you do. But something like Adidas, they'll have a line that's green, or they'll have a line that's going to give back. And so kind of working within their, what they're doing is great. Tentree, which is another one, it's very similar to Patagonia, but again, their products are all amazing and giving back, making a difference. So it's so hard because I see different organizations do not little things, but they all have done their different things, the thing.
It is nice to see more and more of them. That's for sure. Yeah,
exactly. And especially, like I said, when some of the bigger brands really take a step and do it, it kind of helps the others, and that's the thing when I worked for CIBC World Markets, brands like CIBC, sponsoring the Run for the Cure. And they've done that for like years and years, just been leaders in that kind of way. But it is great when I see more and more. And I've even seen it now in a very small, I work with a lot of local entrepreneurs, and you see real estate agents, and I know that they, give back and they do good, and they'll be like, oh, and I sell your house, I give a port. And I was like, you need to put that on your website. Yeah. Literally choose a real estate agent that does that over one that doesn't.
Exactly.
So there are just so many, and I love that there's more restaurants opening up and doing more local and all sorts of things like that. The list is long,
Well, thanks for sharing. Sorry, I didn't mean to put you on the spot. I just, I just wondered if, anyway, it's great. Thank you.
Well, and that's one of the things that there's so much more at stake now as far as environment, and the focus that there are so many large organizations that have contributed to harm to the environment for so long. So now this focus on ESG is the shift from the CSR that companies are looking at this. They're doing audits. And it's hard because there's so many products. Like think about water bottles. Think about everything, like even the labor that's used in the product and the materials. And, one of the hard textiles is one of the largest landfill. So the clothing, and how much clothing is wasted, and not all of it can be composted. I actually was following a woman on LinkedIn who was posting really cool, interesting things about it, and she was composting some garments, and then you didn't realize that you could. I didn't realize you could actually compost them as well. And certain parts are harder because they're thicker, but it's there's a lot that can be done. And
Absolutely.
I think that's where, as I think everyone is more conscious now. So that conscious capitalism, which we can talk a little bit more about now, because that is the thing, is that the newer generations are expecting your company to be doing good and not harm. And so they will actually really research what that organization is doing, who they want to, and then how they are giving back. And I think, the thing is, there's tax advantages for corporations. That's why it used to be just a donation or a foundation or something, but versus now getting your employees involved as well. And I can share, like, there's benefits for the individual, there's benefits for the organization as well. Like, you're happier, you are more fulfilled and engaged in all of those stats. But the corporate, like the conscious capitalism, I find that really interesting because it's almost like it's that oxymoron or whatever. It's like contradictory. How can you be, when you're a capitalist and you want to make money, how can you actually be conscious? And so that shift also to, it's not a focus on profits anymore. It's people, planet, profit, which is like people focus on that, but whatever you're doing, how is it impacting the planet? It's a huge part of it. So you see that in all your advertising. So that's, again, those issues of what's real versus like performative, just like in equity, diversity, inclusion, like what are you really doing and how are you getting employees involved? Yeah. So when you, did you read the book Conscious Capitalism?
Yes, by Ray.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh yeah. I've got like,
well, that's where I figured, because you knew a lot more. And again, for me, this is even newer terminology since the book was written and that. So is there anything else you could share about, getting deeper into that? Why is it called conscious capitalism? Like, what exactly is it?
Well, yeah. So as I mentioned, it sort of is this spectrum, and it's this idea that like do no harm is kind of like the bare minimum. And then there is the ad hoc giving, that sort of corporate social responsibility that's like an arm's length. And then, like I said, when it's baked right into your business model, and that, can be anything from donating 1% to hiring, specific hiring practices, whatever it is, but it's like right into your, right into the business model. And I do think, like, even a short while ago, people just thought it was very counter to profit. Like, it just meant you were going to be spending more or whatever. And now that's just not the case. Like, choosing green products because they're so popular nowadays, you're not at the higher price point than they used to be. So it's not, it's easier to sort of to do the sort of being conscious than it was back in the day when it was really hard. If you wanted to make ethical choices, they literally often came at a higher price point. But now that society is like moved towards everything from like, just there's all the green cleaning products that you can use nowadays, and they're everywhere, and they're now at a more reasonable price than they would have been way back. So things have become easier for organizations to take the steps. And as I said, one of the best things is to sort of, some people will become a champion of one thing and they will like pick a cause or they'll do something, and that's amazing. Or it can be the just, let's reduce the harm, let's reduce our impact, let's just make small changes through the whole company that ultimately is making a bigger difference. And this is the whole, every company is so different that it's hard to sort of say there's like this is the template and this is what to do. But starting with a general audit, starting with just looking at the practices, and I'm talking every practice from your HR to your, supply chain, to your partners, to your, literally your hiring, like just literally every aspect of your business and seeing what you're doing, because it's in everything. It's in your hiring practices. Are you, doing diverse hiring? Are you being environmentally friendly? Are you like, there's so many different opportunities. And so to sort of take a look and start somewhere. And then it is kind of above and beyond just like the do no harm and how can we do better. Is there a bigger calling? Is there a bigger charity or movement that we can put ourselves kind of like in line with and really partner with that makes sense? And that can be a strategic model where, we're in food and food production, therefore something around food scarcity makes sense to partner with, or food provision. Or it can be a personal thing. It can be going out and democratically, asking your your staff where their passions lie and working from that way. So it can come from sort of either direction. The idea is you want passion behind it. You want there to be a reason that you are, aligning with a charity. And my biggest thing is charity is great, business is better. So when I go abroad, yes, we will come, we will donate and whatever, but truly that is setting up a dynamic where there's, those with the resources and then in assumption, those that don't. And it's kind of this like, we're up here and we're giving down here. Whereas business, where it's like, I'm going to purchase from you some goods that you've made, it's a much more respectful, energetically positive exchange. And so this idea of conscious capitalism, if I can buy and just naturally do business that does good and everything, it makes way more sense than just the constant giving and donating. And so the more you can work with what's called a social enterprise, companies that make money and do good, that's the model we want to go to. Even for charities, they're beginning to realize that the knocking on the door all the time isn't always the most effective way. It's a constant ask, constantly seeking money. Whereas if they can find a revenue model, you can actually, if you're producing something that people want, you can make money, then you filter that to those in need. That makes more sense than just constantly having to ask and ask and ask. So you are seeing, even from charities, you're seeing more charities, more people that want to start a charity, consider starting a social enterprise. Let's, instead of just begging people for money to save the planet, let's create a cool, t-shirt line that people can buy, and then we'll put money towards the planet. And so you're kind of getting businesses doing good from both ends, charities that are becoming more business savvy, and then businesses that are becoming more charitable. I just think if everybody ran like that, if all companies just like imagine a world where all companies were conscious, where all companies were considering the earth and people, like it would truly just shift and the world would be such an awesome place. I feel like I totally went off on a tangent. I don't even remember what the question was.
No, it was fantastic. Really all about conscious capitalism. And that's the thing, is because it is, it is important to know as an organization that what you're doing is impacting. Mm-hmm. It is impacting the world some way, right? And so I have a couple of examples on things like from my experience working in corporate. I was at CIBC, so it's a huge part of Run for the Cure for years, and I just loved it. And I did lose a friend to breast cancer. So we actually were, I remember us getting our picture taken at one of the Run for the Cures downtown, and we were in the newspaper or something as well. And that was like really memorable. I have it. I have to get that. But I continued even when I put in a team after. So I sort of shift, like from an individual perspective. Even when I left, I was still like Run for the Cure and having a team for Tracy. And my friend actually organized like one of the Mississauga events, like because we both lost her. And it was just like, it's just this thing that's what you focus on at the time. I think sometimes it depends on what you're doing. ADP Canada, when I was there, what I loved is they had the junior achievement. And so they would allow the time off for individual employees to go and then go to the schools, and they were teaching financial literacy and things like that. And so that was one choice. They also had a matching program. So if you wanted to give, you did United Way, of course, but if you also wanted to give to another organization, they had a matching over and above it. So there's so many things, but it's these large corporations, and so how do the smaller ones. And the one other example, which I love, the company, they used to be called CEO. It's now called Coralus, and it's headed up by Vicki Saunders. And so I'm an activator, and I give my funds, but I don't get anything in return. I don't get a charitable receipt because it is a social organization. And then all of their ventures, the way it's like a crowdsourced fund. And so every activator puts in a certain amount of money, and that money gets pooled, and they've done it in Canada, Australia, US. What they're doing is creating a new model. This is what this is all about. How do we create a new model? And there's criteria, and one of them is your organization has to be doing something towards the UN Sustainable Development Goals, the 17. So whether it's poverty, whether it is environment, whether it is diversity, there's like human rights and things. So it's amazing, like food, scarcity, there's, the water, the seas. And so there is that, again, they're more like social enterprises where it's not a charitable institution. And I think because again, there's so many charities, and I meant to look that up because I did post it earlier in the month because we focused on this all month. And there's so much competition, right, for those organizations to get funds. And remember, they used to do these, I always found it, again, interesting. They used to do these huge galas, which didn't make sense to me because it seemed like a waste of money to put all that into that instead of just using that money. But that, again, their models are changing with that too. And especially since COVID happened. Do you have any, I can't believe we're already at 12:40, but do you have any other thoughts, having worked in corporate for a while and then seeing it evolve? Do you have any other thoughts on how organizations, especially smaller, medium ones that might not have as many funds as these global institutions? Because, the ones that are mentioned are like Whole Foods and Starbucks. But I think it's Starbucks, and I'm like, all those cups, how can that, like, it doesn't, to me, sometimes there's this point where it's like, wait a minute, it's mass production still. And it's like, okay, then what are they doing to offset that,
Yeah. And I think that's one of the big questions when you are, by the nature of your business, going to be doing something that is impacting. Like, there is just, you fly a plane, it is going, there are certain things, even my business, we go abroad, there is naturally an impact. And that is the question. And so is it carbon offsetting? What can you do then to at least reduce the harm or try to offset the harm that you are doing? So that's one just good question any company can do. Like, I am naturally going to produce, cause harm in some way, even if it's like, I'm going to print a report, then that means paper. Like, what can I do, to either minimize that? Is it that we print less? Is it that we email more? Like, I remember NYGARD moving to trying to be a completely paperless company way, way, way back, and where I worked at places where I was an assistant, and they would be like, here, can you just photocopy this binder so someone else has a copy of it? And I was like, what are the chances you're both going to need to read this 500 document page at the same time? And you both are like, here in the building at the same time, like, really, do we need to create another folder just so you have one at each of your desks? Like, simple decisions like that. And I do think businesses have definitely, that was one of the first obvious ones as kind of the whole environmental thing became a thing. It was reduction of, paper, using recycled paper, all of that, and, moving to more online, which thank goodness we are doing. You can sign things now online, which reduces printing out a 50-page document just to sign the last page. So that's been great. But I think one of the biggest things is what I find sometimes when organizations are deciding this, I don't want to say they get a little bit crazy, but they almost get like uber creative and almost sort of overlook the really obvious ways that they can help. And I agree, like, I totally understand that if you're, say, a lawyer, you're maybe looking for something other than lawyering. However, if you are a lawyer and you're like, I want to give and I'm going to go and stand in a soup kitchen and ladle food for an hour, I'm like, thank you. But someone else that is completely not skilled could probably ladle the soup, and you could take your brilliant legal mind and give that hour to an organization that doesn't have $700 to pay for legal support. Like, sometimes they want to get creative and give opportunities that are different and exciting. 100%. Do that because it's going to help the employees feel good and give back. But at the same time, what are the actual resources that your organization have that really could truly make a difference for somebody? I still remember there was a huge print shop, that would print off, at the bottom of CIBC that we use. Crazy. And I always thought if they could just give that access to a couple small charities, so they don't have to go to a print shop, because these things their thing would be like the tiniest blip on their, however many stories and just all of the stuff that gets printed down there. So again, small resource, but we don't think about it. That's a resource, offering up a service that your company already provides. Space. There is so much different spaces for meetings. A lot of people don't have meeting space, especially nowadays. Small charities, they don't have big offices in Toronto. Let's be real, real estate's just too expensive. So a lot of charities don't even have a physical space. And so they want to meet. They're like, I got to meet at a local coffee shop or pay, money to go rent a room somewhere. Hey, most of the financial institutions in Toronto, tons of meeting rooms. Open meeting rooms up. It's just thinking about what are the actual resources we have that we could be providing to those that are doing good. That's the kind of stuff that's another way to think. You have the human resources, very skilled people doing different things. Like you said, that's whether it's mentorship or actually outsourcing and doing pro bono. I know legals already, do pro bono cases, but I think can more companies take on this pro bono approach of giving
I love that. Yeah.
their time, giving their energy, giving their minds and their expertise. There's so many ways. You're running a big corporate training, right? You're bringing in some huge expert on marketing, whatever it is. Hey, who could benefit from that? If you already have your 100 staff in the room, why don't you go out and ask a couple charities if they would like a couple free seats, because you're already hosting for your organization. Invite some partner or charities in to say, hey, would it benefit your marketing department to listen to this guru or whatever we are talking about? Again, these different ways of thinking about how we can open our businesses more to allow more partnerships and opportunities with those that are doing good. Again, I know another organization, and they send their accountants abroad, and they go do a 6 months in a small charity, and they get their paperwork up and they get their banking sorted and and I'm just like, what an amazing opportunity for the person who gets to go and have this international experience. And how awesome for the small charity to have someone with that expertise come in, set up their systems, all of that. So there's just so many interesting ways. It can be a win-win-win. Win for the employees, win for the business, and a win for the charity or the cause or whatever. There's just so many different ways. If we I don't want to say get too creative that you're going down weird paths, but looking truly at, my biggest thing is, what resources do I have that I can give? What resources does a business have? And I really mean all of the resources that they could give. And where can they make these alignments and these collaborations that could really be benefiting? Even if it's, hey, we need to bring in catering. You know what? There's so many small businesses that could really do with your help, whether it's women owned or there's this incredible organization that is doing food from places in East Africa. And it's like an awareness thing, and they run little meals on a Monday night, and you can go. And I'm just like, why not tap into people like that can also come? And then you're helping with like diversity, and it's not just the same old lunch that everybody eats. And it's a moment, an opportunity to shine some spotlight on, you know, the work that some people are doing, have some exciting and different food, some diversity exposure. Like, there's just so many different
Be creative.
Be creative with your
it's funny. Yeah, I just wanted to mention, because when you were talking about this, I remember when I was at CIBC, and I was in HR at the time, and the VP I worked with, we were pitching to the leaders of extending our volunteerism program. And because they had the volunteer days, which is wonderful, and they had other, you know, donations, and then people as teams would maybe go do Habitat for Humanity, or they, you know, we've gone to like the food bank and volunteered for a day, and things like that. And so we actually were hoping to introduce a new program, and it was exactly that, where now you couldn't have all the employees, but they would have a criteria analysis, and people would put in an application depending on their skill set, and they could go and then work for 6 months in a nonprofit. And I thought and I was so excited. We didn't get it done. I have to follow up with my colleague to see if they ever did. I'm curious. Anyway, that VP then went on to another bank and actually headed up that department, which I think was called CSR. I don't know what it's called now, but corporate giving or something like that. And so I thought, oh, I wonder if she did it at the new bank. I'll have to follow up with her, because I thought, in addition to the days, giving the time, expanding it was almost like a sabbatical, but you would go and do that, like either in accounting or lawyer or marketing or whatever, but you'd go and work in that organization for 6 months. So, I mean, that's wonderful. And I think the other thing, because we're along this topic, which was the last, part, it really was, how can these organizations, regardless of your size, because again, larger ones might have the opportunity, but then it's like, can we do it for everybody? Can we actually offer someone a 2-month unpaid sabbatical, even to go on a trip like we did? Like I spent 3 weeks with you, or a shorter, you're using your vacation, but can they open up another way of expanding their volunteer program, right? And I love that, the local focus, but also the world focus, and thinking beyond and getting the employees involved too, because I also heard some negative things, that some didn't like the fact that they were told what it was and they had to go, and it was like forced fun, and they didn't really feel aligned to it. So that's, again, how do you become aligned? So we have about 10 minutes left, so I know we've covered some ideas there, but I also wanted you to have a chance to kind of talk about your triple change model, or anything else you want to share about what you're doing, what Yugo Impact is doing, and where your contribution for the rest of the year, and then going forward. If you and if anybody has a question, put it in the chat. We can cover it off, or just pop out because it's small.
Yeah.
So 10 minutes. Where did that time go?
Yeah, well, and that's the thing. So our triple change model is literally, it's like a Venn diagram, and it's the idea of changing yourself, changing your community, and changing your world. And it really, it kind of change really does start with us. And so knowing ourselves, knowing who we are, and literally just being good human beings at home, like, positive relationships at home is literally, if you think if everybody did that, the world would be a better place, right? Like if we all just started at our home. But even within ourselves, just when you are a happier person, you're more likely to give back. You're more likely to be generous. Like it's a cycle, right? Or when you give back, you're more likely to feel happy. So that's my big thing, is I'm always like letting people know, like adopting a service leadership mindset, getting into that idea of like, how can I be of service to everyone in my life? And whether that's, my family, my colleagues, my workplace, just my community. And then that literally does start changing your community, the relationships you have with the people. And that's kind of the big thing there. changing your community. And that's the people in your life, that's your actual local community. And then from there, it's changing your world. And that's kind of the culmination. When you're doing all of this, you are naturally changing your world. And that is literally your world at home, but also the world. And that's sort of that piece, like, how can we do something bigger in terms of the world? And so there's this sort of triple change model, and there's more intricacies in between it all, and being an impactful leader and all of this kind of stuff. But yeah, and as you know, we focus within our programming on the pillars of happiness. And this comes back to the workplace. For anyone that's read, I think it's like, the book on happiness, the shoe company that was all about happiness, Zappos. They literally went to focus. They were like, instead of trying to like achieve things to make us happy, why don't we focus on happiness and see how that helps us to achieve things? And they became a super successful shoe company because their whole thing was delivering happiness. And so we literally base our entire curriculum and our whole programming on 3 pillars of happiness. And my biggest thing is, we spend so much time at work. How can we create happier workplaces? Places where you feel good, you feel a sense of purpose, you have nourishing relationships there, and a sense of gratitude. And giving is so key, in my opinion, whether that's feeling you're contributing to your business, whether that's contributing to the world, or kind of both, like we just talked about. And so that's another big focus, just people being happier. And how can people feel happier at the workplace? They feel more fulfilled. And for anyone, I don't know if you guys know B. Bocaliandro, but she literally wrote a book called Doing Good at Work. And it's about job purposing and how any job can feel purposeful if you add that sort of more social give back element to it. And she gives a whole slew of examples. But again, it's people just showing up being happier. And if we all were happier, like, the world would be a gentle, kinder place, right? Like, I literally posted something the other day. I'm like, happy people don't start wars. Like, they just don't, yeah, like, if people are in the throes of just feeling so happy and great, they're not looking for more, and they don't want to take from people. They're just happy. They're fulfilled. They feel good. And I actually feel that the more we can focus on that, it literally shifts cultures at work. Because if you show up feeling good, you're less likely to be competitive with colleagues. You're more likely to then want to collaborate because you're feeling good and happy with who you are. So, I mean, I can go through so many things, but that's some of the basis. Like, Hugo is really big on just working towards, and I'm not talking happy, like toxic happiness. I'm talking about that deep feeling of like fulfillment and joy, and having gratitude for what we have, and wanting to use our privilege to do good. And so, yeah, I'm about to start an Elevate Ecuador program in a couple of weeks, and then we head down to Ecuador, and we're actually going to be building a groundskeeper's home on a school, because our belief is ask what they need, not what we think they want, or we don't, none of that white savior business. We go down and we ask, what do you need? What can we help you accelerate by bringing our resources and matching them with your resources, and coming at this from a very equal collaborative partnership with the organizations abroad. And yeah, so we're doing that in April. It's our Elevate Ecuador program. Well, it starts actually next week, because we start the life coaching before that. I'm running Courage Community Kilimanjaro in January of 2024. So the program that Helen participated in, I know it's so impactful for both the people that participate in it and the charity that receives, that we partner with. So we're heading back and doing that. And then I'm actually looking to run a program later in the spring to Peru. So, and that will be with a women's weaving cooperative, and helping build a weaving center, and then visiting Machu Picchu. And again, always with this idea of like creating profound change for both the participants and the receiving community, and helping the participants start thinking about how they can become a force for good. How can they come home and continue to do good work, or continue to do good work abroad? How can they make a difference with their business or at a job? All of that. It's the, getting things percolating and helping people just to make the world a kinder, more gentle place. So yeah.
Amazing. So Peru's next spring?
Yeah. Okay. It was going to be fall, but I pushed it because there's still political stuff, and I just felt I didn't want to,
Yeah. Oh, well, that's
um,
exciting. That's good for me.
yes, so I will
It
let
might
you
be
know,
my thing.
keep you posted.
So amazing. Like, I just love the work you do. I've just been blessed to have you in my life and the experience that I had. And I think that, that we probably could talk about this all day and create things. And I just think it is about being open to it. And it is something that every organization has to do. As I started as a small business, I mean, it was kind of me, the entrepreneur, self-employed. So I decide. But as I evolve, or with a few other team members, we can look at it. This month, we actually gave to Black Mentorship Inc., which is an organization with Black History Month. But also, I know the founder, and I've been following her since she started, and connected with her and donating to her org and time as well. But it's also aligned to mentorship, so it makes sense, right? And it fits into what we're passionate about here as well. And so I think it's just important. And I think every organization, a lot of them now, the purpose-driven ones, it's like what they do in the business as well. Their business is the purpose and how they're giving back. But if it is something that it's a product where you do have, you might impact the carbon footprint, or you just need to be creative about how are we going to offset this in a way, right? And then I think it's important to get employees' input as well. I mean, generally the founders, but as you evolve, if you grow and you say, hey, I'd love to do something together. What do you have, ideas where they feel like they're involved as well? I really encourage companies to offer volunteer days or these projects, like even if they are a smaller scale project, it's still at least giving. And there are so many causes out there. And so I do think, like, the community, I mean, there's hospitals looking as well. But there's something that's meaningful to you and your team. I think it's good to chat about it. I think everybody should give days off for that, because people need the time. And I think if we could kind of encourage that model of like longer periods, like paid leaves or sabbaticals or paid volunteer, where you're giving your expertise in some way. And I think, because it does take a lot of time and energy, but it definitely, I was looking at the impacts, and it says, happiness, lower blood pressure, increased self-esteem, less depression, longer life. That's the individual benefits. And then, obviously for organizations, increased engagement. You can go on and on, happier, conscious culture, right?
Yeah.
So it's 1:00. If anybody has a last question, if not, we can wrap up.
Thoughts or anything. Yeah.
Yeah.
I just want to thank you for your time. I mean, I don't know, sharing what you do and what you love, and how different companies can do things, even just in their everyday way, is brilliant, So thank you for that. That was
my pleasure.
Really, I don't know, a nice way of looking at it differently.
Fabulous.
Yeah, and I know Juanita's been having trouble with her video, but Juanita, you're there. Oh, you're on mute. Hang on. You're on mute, Juan. That's okay.
I wanted to say thank you, Jill, for everything you do. You're very empowering. And I agree with everything you say, that every, as individuals, we can make a difference, whether you're a small business or big business, whether you're doing it on your own. If we all kind of get together and make a positive difference for ourselves, the community, and the world, I totally agree with everything that you say, and thanks for everything that you do.
Oh, thank you. This was so lovely.
And so one of the things that Jill, on the program, we had little cards and to thank people or express gratitude, aggressively grateful. And so I am for having you here today and you taking the time with us. There's so much connected to it, right? And I think that I think most people think they can't, like they don't have the time. but there's millions of people that even if they give 1 hour, right? Whenever they can. So, and in whatever way they can, I think it will, hopefully spread that, contagion of giving and positivity. So I will share the slides and Jill's contact information. Jill Valentine on Instagram, LinkedIn. I have the link as well. And then Hugo Impact, and the website is in the presentation. There's links. So we always send that out after to anybody that actually shows up, but also signed up, because things happen and then we send out the recording. So anyway, I really wish you the best with Ecuador. I wish I could come.
Thanks. Well, and we do have spots. If anybody does know anyone, there's a couple spots available. So mid-April, we're heading down for a week, and then people can join us in the Galapagos. So
Wow.
I know that one sounds like a lot better than climbing a mountain. It was wonderful. So thanks again, and everybody else have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
See you later.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Bye.